All right, we're going to get started. So good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Listen Tools for the Family First Prevention Services Act. We're honored that you've all taken the time to be here with us today. For the first part of this webinar, all attendees are going to be muted while our presenter, Jenny Cheng, introduces us to Lyssn, how we relate to Family First, and provide an overview of the Lyssn platform. When we proceed to the Q&A portion of this webinar, I'm going to unlock all the microphones and you'll be able to mute and unmute yourselves. During the question and answer portion of this webinar, Lyssn's Director of Clinical AI, Brian Pace, and CTO, Mike Tanana, will also join us for that section. To get started, I have the great pleasure of introducing my fantastic colleague and teammate, Jenny Cheng, who is Lyssn's Family First lead. She obtained her Master of Social Work at the University of Utah and was there for about 5 years before coming to Lyssn. As the Family First lead, Jenny will navigate your organization's ongoing relationship with Lyssn, and today and in the future, you're in great hands with Jenny Cheng. Here we go.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here with us today. I am super excited to be able to spend this time with you all and just talk a little bit about Lyssn and some of the ways that we can support you all in the important work you do in the child welfare sector. So as Lisa mentioned, prior to joining the Lyssn team, I worked at the Social Research Institute at the University of Utah, supporting several child welfare related research projects, including the state of Utah's 4E waiver evaluation, their Family First evaluation planning, and several initiatives to increase capacity for the agencies around the state that provided child welfare services. And so I'm super passionate about hopefully getting the word out about Lyssn in this area and hopefully supporting some of the, as I mentioned, the important work that you all do. So for today, we will be spending a little time just talking about Lyssn for those of you who are not familiar with our company, and then talking about how we relate to the Family First legislation and where we can be helpful. And then I'll jump into our Lyssn Advisor platform, which is one of our core products, and show you around a little bit for some of the around the tools that I'll talk about. And then we'll regroup and open things up for questions and discussion and wrap things up there. So I'm hoping that as much as I provide information about Lyssn, we have a ton of super awesome representation across many states and child welfare stakeholders here at this meeting. And so I'm hoping that we can also have a space here to learn from you all, learn from each other, and leave this meeting feeling like it was a good use of your time. So to kick things off, for those of you who are not familiar with Lyssn, we are a technology company and we focus on developing AI-enabled products to support the training, supervision, and quality assurance of evidence-based behavioral health treatment. And our company's mission is to promote high-quality behavioral health treatment for everyone, everywhere, using these innovative AI technologies. And our company's founders are really the academic experts in this area. They've been studying AI solutions in therapy and social service settings for more than 12 years and have over $12 million of NIH funding backing the development and research of our products that are the core behind our platform. And you know, they had this academic research that was creating these innovative tools and they wanted to get them out into the real world. And so they created our company as a vehicle to get these products into the hands of the people on the front line that are doing the hard work that could actually make a dent in our overall company mission of improving behavioral health treatment universally. And so right now we have a pretty large and growing customer base. We have over 80 customers that are using our tools, and they range everywhere from small community-based organizations and providers all the way up to large behavioral health systems and government entities. Of note, we've been partnering with the Annie E. Casey Foundation for the last handful of years on several projects to get our tools into the hands of providers that work more directly with child welfare involved families and youth. So for example, one of our projects is with the Covenant House in New York City, which is a shelter and service provider for youth experiencing homelessness, where we provide a couple of our AI-enabled training tools to help them keep up their staff training. And so we are able to have this diverse customer base because our products and services resolve several different types of problems that people face, our customers face. And we have some solutions such as, secure recording and sharing, collaboration tools to enhance the supervision and skill coaching that happens in the field. And then we have meaningful feedback that's generated by machine learning models that can be incorporated in a variety of ways. Our core platform, which is called Lyssn Advisor, which is what I'll show you in a little bit, also has a built-in telehealth platform, which has been helpful in the age of the COVID pandemic. And so customers are drawn to a variety of different tools, but at its core, there's kind of three primary areas that we support, which is the training, practice, and ongoing maintenance of high-quality counseling skills. And so we have 2 training products in development right now that hone in on some of the components of effective training that are often difficult to scale. So intentional practice of skills and then immediate feedback on your performance. And then we have a supervision and QA/QI platform, which is, again, what I'll show you in a little bit, that helps with the maintenance of skills on an ongoing basis where you're kind of continuing your personal growth and education. So how does all of this map onto Family First? We really feel that we're well suited to help in the prevention services arena, in those components of the legislation that aim to expand prevention services. And so while my program evaluation heart sings a little bit seeing this types of legislation that is focused on evidence-based treatment and how to kind of pay attention to the quality over time, I also see that there's a lot of burdens that come with that and that states and jurisdictions need to overcome in order to be successful in implementing these services. So a few of the pain points that we see with Family First are the requirements around rigorous evaluations and ongoing fidelity monitoring related to the CQI components. And for many agencies, some of these interventions may be brand new, or they may be things that they've been providing for a long time, but they've never been expected to participate in this fidelity monitoring component and those types of activities. And so really we feel that our tools can help scale these activities and provide additional support in a way that's feasible for agencies of all sizes. So for 2 evidence-based treatments, we can provide accurate automated fidelity estimates within a matter of minutes of having information put into our system. And then for other evidence-based programs and services that a state might have selected on their 4E prevention plan, we can support those rigorous evaluation and CQI activities with our ability to securely record and share sessions and recordings of sessions. And then our transcripts and our annotated transcripts that can help with additional analyses. So let's pivot for just a minute and talk a little bit about how our system works. Our core technology captures the raw audio of a provider session. That could be a psychotherapy session, a case management interaction, and then we run that audio through our AI pipeline, and we provide back 54 different quality analytics that provide stakeholders information about what's happening in a session. And so we give providers immediate feedback to enhance their effectiveness and their skill development, and supervisors get detailed information that can guide precision supervision and skill coaching. And then organizations at a higher level get a summary of all of the sessions and all of their providers so that they can prove the quality of their providers and the services that they provide. And really for the first time, we feel that we enable an agency to use the actual quality of sessions to guide their QA and QI processes. So what are those quality measures that we can provide back? There are some things that we evaluate that relate to just general counseling skills. So things like active listening, empathy, collaboration. And then we also have session summary codes we have 28 unique content codes to kind of summarize the types of topics that come up in a session. Did suicide come up? Was there discussion of parenting, opioid use, alcohol use? The list goes on. And then we also evaluate two of the most commonly utilized evidence-based treatments, cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational interviewing. And we are using the gold standard observation-based fidelity measures for each of those. And our system does really well. We perform competitively with a human rater who's rating the same types of sessions for the same types of codes. So let's take a closer look at motivational interviewing for a minute. We've seen a huge influx in interest of motivational interviewing in the child welfare sector. I think it's related to the Family First legislation for a few different reasons. It has a well-supported rating on the 4E Prevention Services Clearinghouse, which means that states are eligible from that evaluation component for this particular EBP. And then it also has a really broad applicability. And so we've seen a lot of states that are adopting MI as an engagement tool to engage families in other evidence-based treatments that may be more directly targeting their case plans and their case needs. So for these reasons, we've seen this huge expansion of interest, but we also know that the fidelity measures for motivational interviewing in particular that are kind of the gold standard require an observation of a session, and in a traditional sense, it's humans that go through and code these sessions looking for specific components that relate to MI adherence. So those two of the most commonly utilized instruments are the MIDI and the MISC, both of which Lyssn supports. So if a site were to adopt motivational interviewing as an intervention and need to monitor fidelity, one option of what this could look like in a real world setting is a provider at the agency would record a session, several sessions a month, and then use one of our automated fidelity ratings, which I can show you in our platform when we do the demo, to gauge their proficiency in that given session. And so to put some numbers to that, it might look like recording 6 sessions a month where the habit of recording kind of begins to fall into place, where maybe three of those sessions have a rating of 6 or above on that metric that I'm talking about. And that metric is derived from the MIDI, and it calls out the 6 core components of MI. And so we feel like that would be, one way that you could go about using our system in a very concrete way to meet that ongoing fidelity monitoring requirement. Okay, so next I will jump over to our platform and give you a little bit of a demo. Let me just switch my screens real quick. Okay, so you are now looking at our Lyssn Advisor platform, and I am logged into our demo account as a user, so as if I was a therapist or a case manager. A few things to note about our system just right out the gate. It's a web-based, a cloud-based software where you access it from a Chrome-based web browser. So you don't have to download apps or software. You jump in, it looks something like this. If I were to be one of those providers recording sessions regularly, I have a list of all of my established clients on the left-hand side, and then a button here where I can quickly add a new client. If I need to add them and immediately record, I can quickly and easily do that. And then if I click on a given client, what I'm looking at now is the client dashboard. where I have 3 options to get a recording onto the platform. 2 options that everything stays within the Lyssn system. You can either record in person or by telehealth, and the recording is encrypted while in transit and while at rest on its way to our secure HIPAA compliant servers. And so the advantage here is that you don't ever have to have providers saving files with PHI on local devices. It can all be contained within our secure system. We also have the option for users to upload a session that was recorded elsewhere. And either way, regardless of how you get a session onto the platform, for each session, we provide back several things. So let me just show you real quick. Each of these rows is a recording that I've created with this hypothetical client. One thing I want to call your attention to is this hold button, where our system is set up to have recordings automatically expire off our platform after a certain number of days that you decide as the customer. So this is to avoid recordings sitting here and waiting for somebody to manually delete them. We kind of make that an automatic process where you have the option to hold a session beyond that period of time. But as a general rule of thumb, they're going to expire off our platform after a certain amount of time. The next thing I want to show you is some of those collaboration tools that we mentioned. So for the session view, which is what we're looking at now, you kind of get a YouTube view of that recording that you can play back and watch in real time. But on the main portion of the screen, what you'll see and notice here is an automated speech-to-text transcript. And we provide this back for every session where we are parsing it and identifying the speaker. So we are breaking these talk turns into whether it's the client speaking or the provider. And then up here at the top, you'll also notice there are these bubbles with labels. Those are those 28 unique content codes where you can click on one of those topics and filter the transcript to only view those talk turns. And then one other thing that we are doing is calling out highly empathic moments. And so if you click on this little icon here, if you have one of those moments in a session, we'll call it out in a session, kind of give you kudos to make the feedback more reinforcing. The transcript is searchable by keyword, so you can quickly kind of skim through and find specific portions of the session that you're interested in reviewing. And then it's also time linked, so if you click on a portion of the transcript, it'll queue up the tape right to where that happens so that you can quickly review what you're looking for in a session in real time. So those are just some of the features that help with supervision and collaboration. The other thing that we provide for every session is a session report. So what we're looking at here is a report for that session where the transcript is in a different view here. You can kind of roll over and see how our system has coded each talk turn. So for example, this was coded as a complex reflection and emphasizing control. And then on the bottom portion of the page, we have 3 tabs that cover some of those key metrics of that list of 54. So things like who's doing the talking, is the person using open questions, are they using reflections? And then we have 2 tabs for those specific evidence-based treatments that we can provide those specific fidelity measures for. So for motivational interviewing, that's where you would get that overall MI fidelity score where you're looking for a 6 or above. And you also can see kind of on a more granular level how we are providing our global ratings for the session as well as specific behavior counts. And all of these codes are derived from the MISC and the MIghty, the motivational interviewing skills codes, and the motivational interviewing treatment integrity coding system, which are again the 2 kind of gold standard fidelity measures for MI. And then for CBT, we're using the cognitive therapy rating scale, and that instrument looks a little different. So the report reflects that, reflects the instrument. So this one's on a Likert scale between 0 and 6 on 11 items. And so you can see here for each of those 11 items how you are faring. And this system covers common factors as well as specific CBT techniques. So in addition to the session level reports, we also have aggregate data viz dashboard that outlines kind of on a larger scale how your workforce is doing on these metrics. And so you can identify the time frame that you're interested in, and then the specific metric that you're interested in. And then what we're looking at now is the entire organization's empathy scores across all of the providers and all of their sessions. So each of these bubbles indicates a provider, and the size of the bubble indicates the number of sessions that are going into these average scores. And then I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little dotted line here that indicates the benchmark for basic proficiency in this particular metric. And so you can kind of drill down and you can see, you know, within a single provider across their caseload, how they're doing on that specific metric. And you can drill down a level further and say, oh, let's see here, I'm sorry. So yeah, you can drill down and see on the therapist level how they're doing across their caseload, and then across their caseload with a specific client, you can see across all of the sessions they've recorded with that specific individual, how they're doing with empathy across time. And so these are just some of the tools that we provide back to make it easy to identify trends, things that you might be curious to look into a little bit further, potentially, you know, training needs if you're using it in a CQI capacity, identifying strengths and potential growth edges for your workforce. You can kind of use these tools to quickly identify those things. And all of the sessions are available in a data download table where you can see for every session that has been entered onto the Lyssn system for your organization, the codes for each session. So with that, I would like to jump back over to our slideshow to just finish it out with one last summary slide here, where I feel like, you know, kind of the two key takeaways here is that Lyssn can help solve some of those basic fidelity monitoring problems that many states and jurisdictions are facing, or evaluation partners. And we really feel that we can help improve service quality over time in a way that's scalable and sustainable. So with that, let's move into any questions that may have come up from the group. And I'll just toss it back to Lisa, who's been keeping track of things on chat.
Hey, Jenny, we haven't had any questions coming over the chat, so I think everybody must have been saving them for in person. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone, or unlock the mute session, so everybody will be able to have full audio control of themselves. So if you would like to comment or ask a question, unmute your microphone and send it our way, or you can send it through the question feature. And we'd love to have Mike and Brian join us up here on the panel as well. We have one question that is asking, what languages can Lyssn translate?
So currently we have, our system supports English, and pretty soon here we have all the inner workings hooked up for Spanish. And so those are the two main languages that we support right now. Great question.
And one of the cool things that our system can do is that you know, we've learned through work with our partners that a lot of times Spanish interventions don't happen all in Spanish, and so our Spanish pipeline can actually handle clients dynamically switching between English and Spanish, which is how in the real world a lot of therapy can happen for bilingual clients.
Thanks, Mike. We have another question that came in. It is, how are we ensuring confidentiality of the information discussed in the session? How long and where are recordings kept?
I'm going to throw that to you, Brian, since you're our compliance guy, if that's okay. You have all the information on data security.
Yeah, so we have a third party that audits our platform every year that does a SOC 2 and HIPAA audit. And that is a detailed process where we basically go through and they review all of our vendor assessment materials, our risk assessment materials, and how we handle data, our agreements with AWS, because Lyssn uses the AWS service. And any data that's used to improve our algorithms is de-identified. And that's stored on our secure HIPAA compliant servers as well.
Christy, if that wasn't, if that didn't answer your complete question, then just send more details over the chat. Or
okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. Afternoon. I just am a little concerned about that confidentiality piece and how we ensure that. Makes me a little nervous that I hear third party, but when you also add de-identification, do you have like a manual that you're using to do that? And maybe just talk more about how that information, when it's being recorded during a therapy session, is de-identified.
Yeah. Mike, do you want to chime in if I miss anything too? The only PHI that would explicitly be on the Lyssn platform is the name that the provider would put in to store their recordings. And so after that, the file itself, anything that's stored on the platform would be attached to that name as long as it exists. But when the file is removed, it's no longer attached to any identifying information of person, place, or time.
Could someone go listen to those recordings? Or is it just recorded for the purpose of the tech pulling out the analytics, and then the analytics are what's recorded?
Yeah, and so at Lyssn, as part of our audit too, we verify that there's only a select few people that could potentially even access any recordings. It's like the CTO and like myself, and then Angela does customer support, so she can log into any of these platforms or log in to change people's logins as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I know it's getting into the weeds a little bit, but I just want to be able to.
No, not at all. I mean, data security is really important. We do have some sites that ask us not to retain data, and so on a customer basis, we can make that decision. The trade-off there is that we can never improve with specific data sets that we can't retain the identified. If that makes sense.
Right, it is a very challenging intermediary for sure. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Our next question is, what technology is recommended to record sessions?
So our platform is set up to map on to whatever workflows you have in place. And so you can use just a regular, if you're interested in doing video recordings, you don't need video, but we have that as an option. You can use just a regular webcam or your laptop's microphone. You could use a cell phone device as your recording device. And so it's a pretty diverse application for whatever equipment you all have and want to use. But yes, you can use just your basic laptop or cell phone to make recordings.
And Jennifer, if you wanted to follow up on that question, you can go ahead and do that now, or you can put additional comments within the you got the all good there. Okay, so the next question is, what is the capacity for Lyssn to add additional fidelity monitoring metrics specific to organizational needs?
I'm gonna throw this to Mike because he is the decider of all things.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So this is a question we get a lot, right? You know, and it's a tricky question because when it comes to fidelity monitoring, there are just so many different systems out there. I mean, I once looked, and it's just for motivational interviewing, it's something like 30 or 40 different validated fidelity systems exist. And so, you know, we can't do everything. And so our goal is to try to, you know, identify where the needs are the largest, where you know, where are there areas where people have the largest need for a fidelity monitoring system. And then also there's a limitation on, there's typically got to be some validated tools out there that we map onto. You know, if no one's ever achieved human reliability with a fidelity tool, it's going to be challenging for us, because then we have to do two things where we have to, you know, Brian has to develop a validated tool for monitoring fidelity, and then you know, we have to train algorithms to sort of match that. And so those are sort of the two considerations. Basically, you know, how many people have the need for a tool, and then, you know, are there some existing resources that we can train an algorithm to map onto. And I mean, I guess the third thing that sometimes comes into consideration is some places already have existing data sets, and that can obviously speed the process as well. Is there anything in particular that that you were interested in? Any, because we're always trying to figure out, like, where are the needs right now for fidelity monitoring?
Hi, Mike. This is Kristen from SRI Asked the Question.
Hey, how are you doing, Kristen?
Yeah, no, it was mostly just out of curiosity. I mean, and you know, the nature of the work we do is we work with these agencies, and they often have very specific things they're wanting us to do. And so, yeah, just curious about the flexibility of the system. That's why I asked.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, because we do measure so many different behaviors, sometimes what people will do is that, you know, at least you can map some of the things we measure onto other existing work that you're doing. I mean, a great example is in child welfare. Coaching, supervisory coaching is a major initiative in a lot of different states. And so, you know, one thing that you can do is that coaching has two components, right? You got to sort of, you know, using open questions, reflections, affirmations. We can measure all those things. And then you've got some coaching specific stuff that you might sort of have to hand check manually or use the transcript feature as a way to do it. So sometimes people do a mix and a match there where they can use some of our off the shelf stuff, right?
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Kristen.
For sure.
Another question that has just come in is, what is the process for obtaining informed consent from clients?
So we don't manage the process of obtaining that consent. That's at the agency level. However, we do have some, you know, model language that we can provide agencies that are using Lyssn as kind of a jumping off point to kind of make sure that it adheres to their local laws and needs. So we can provide that if that's of help.
The next question is, how does the AI technology system or algorithm ameliorate, detect, monitor bias from the designer mapping as well as participants?
Lisa, you cut out a little bit. That's about AI bias.
Oh, sure. I can do that again. How does the AI technology system or algorithm ameliorate, detect, monitor bias from designer mapping as well as the participants?
Mm-hmm. I can take a stab at this. So that the bias in our algorithm and our metrics is something that we take seriously and continually try to improve. I think it's parallel to the idea of provider multicultural competence. It's like something you always continue to work on and work on and work on over time. So we work on our metric bias by continuing to sample from as diverse populations as possible And so for programs that opt to allow us to de-identify a small portion of their data and human evaluate it with our internal team, those are the metrics then that feed into the platform, whether it be accented speakers or types of interventions, to try to build the most diverse data set that we can.
Yeah, and so I think there's like a lot of different things that go into AI bias. AI bias is really complicated, right? Like Brian said, just making sure you have a diverse sample is probably one of the easiest and most important things you can do. And so we actually have incentive programs for people who do psychotherapy with underrepresented groups, right? Both therapists and clients. And so that's, I think, the most important thing. There's a lot of different sub areas of that question, where bias can creep in at the human coding level, at the sort of the way that the AI processes the data, at the ASR level. And so we're constantly like looking at those different things in all of those different levels. But like Brian said, it's not, bias in algorithms isn't something you do one time and say like, we're good, right? I mean, because we'd be great to say that, right? But it's something that we're constantly looking at and monitoring and trying to discover those sources of bias. But it's something that we'll continue to do over the long run. But it's something that's important to us and that we're always looking at.
Indra, if we didn't completely answer your question, then just ping us and let us know, or chime in when there's a free moment. The next question that we'll be looking at is, there seems to be a growing interest in the BECCI fidelity monitoring for MI. Would you look into including the BECCI?
I would probably say, okay, so like I said, Jenny, I forget if you were part of this paper. There's a good review that came out of the College of Social Work here in Utah, where it was a review of all of the motivational interviewing adherence monitoring tools, and there are so many. We come across people all the time where we go into an organization and they say, well, we use this MI fidelity tool, and there's a lot of workflows we have built around that. And it's tough, right? Because we're never going to be good at 30 or 40 different ones. And so, what we decided on is to like focus on these two tools, but something that we can help you do is to figure out how your workflows map on from your current tool, map onto some of our tools. And so that's something that we've done, for example, with the MIA step, where we worked with the creator of the MIA step to figure out like, how does his fidelity monitoring process map onto the things that we measure. And so there are a lot of people who use the MIA step, for example, that now use Lyssn, because it's like, well, we can get that automatically, whereas the MIA step is going to cost us 2 hours of a supervisor's time, right? But it is tricky. I wish we could do everything, for all of these things, but it's, we're in the early stages here of, AI in behavioral monitoring. And so, we're trying to figure out what are the key things that we can do well, and our implementation team can really work with you to figure out how those things can help you do your goals. Because really what we want is outcomes, right? We want people to do better MI, and we want them to obtain better outcomes. And so, we're here to help you figure out how to get there. And fidelity monitoring tool is just like one path to getting to those outcomes that you care about.
Our next question is, are there any public child welfare agencies using Lyssn for FFPSA fidelity monitoring of MI?
So we have, we are in talks with a few jurisdictions and states. And then we have some community-based organizations that are using our system to meet those fidelity monitoring requirements in the state of New Hampshire. So we are getting there, but not fully landed on a few of those deals. However, in the state of Utah, we'll be working through our partnership with the Annie E. Casey Foundation to bring some of these tools to caseworkers that work with child welfare involved youth and families.
And Jenny, I think we can, so some of these things we can't actually announce yet, but I think there is one recent thing that we can formally announce because the contract has been signed. And so we'll be working with the training provider for FFPSA in the state of Utah to provide fidelity monitoring for people trained in MI by the state. And then I think in the next, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the next month or two, there should be some announcements around more formal state contracts for actually meeting the requirements of the FFPSA in the community.
Thanks, Mike. So Lisa, I don't know if there's other questions coming in, but I also wanted to leave some space, since we have a great group on the call, to just hear from you all. If you have specific pain points related to this fidelity monitoring requirement, and maybe just sharing how you've gone about meeting those with the group that may also benefit from that knowledge and information. So I don't know, I'll just maybe leave that out there for anybody who has thoughts they'd like to share.
Another question that's come in is regarding additional EBPs and fidelity monitoring. I was wondering about parent-child interaction therapy. It does have clear fidelity expectations.
That's one that's come up a lot. Curious, is someone on the call using PCIT as part of their FFPSA plan?
Hi, this is Lori Theodoro from the Oregon Health Authority. And hi, and I am part of the Family First Prevention Services cross-agency collaboration to develop our state plan in Oregon, and parent-child interaction therapy was one of the first and easy choices because we have a wide network of providers, and I am the state's PCIT implementation specialist. And fidelity monitoring has been happening before Family First, just for Medicaid and commercial reimbursable services. But it is a challenge, and it is time consuming. Because PCIT is nationwide and internationally very widespread, I just wondered whether you were considering adding that. The procedure manual has clear fidelity checklists. There are Code the Coach coding systems, and I'm sure PCIT International would be a great resource for developing a consistent fidelity monitoring system for Family First projects.
Yeah, so I think PCIT, if we, is very close to the top of our list in terms of fidelity monitoring systems that we have considered, and so that's really helpful to hear that. And that's also really helpful to hear. It sounds like you all have been doing human-based fidelity monitoring of that in the state, and so those are wonderful places to start with, because if you've been doing that human monitoring, you can sort of appreciate,
Yes.
maybe having a reduced workload. So yeah, I think that would be a really interesting site to consider that with, especially since we're already working with the state of Oregon with, is it called the LOCI project, Jenny?
LOCI.
LOCI, right, LOCI project. And so I imagine there are maybe already some state agreements that we have in place that might could potentially expedite the process. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
That would be exciting, I think, and very helpful to, I mean, we have a network and a process, but for sites that are just starting PCIT, adding the fidelity component to implementation could be challenging, and if Lyssn had that ability, it would be extremely helpful. Anyway, thank you.
We have 3 comments that came in around the PCIT information. So we have ID'd PCIT in our plan in Vermont, but are in the process of approval following this, and that's from Beth Salzville. And if you wanted to chime in on that, Beth, go ahead and do that. We also have a comment from Jagdish Maju, which is PCIT is a common in EBP states are implementing or planning to implement. So Jagdish, if you have some comments about that, you can go ahead and unmute and tell us about those. And then we also have a comment from Jennifer O'Brien that says PCIT is integrated into both the California and the Rhode Island prevention plans. So those 3 comments came up during the last conversation.
So 3 more checks for PCIT maybe. I've been following different plans, and I've had a similar observation that PCIT seems like a very popular choice for states in their plans.
So for the folks that have been doing, it sounds like there's a bunch of people who have been really involved in PCIT. Do you see any challenges with recording, or when you do fidelity monitoring, or have you been doing recording in the home and in a typical family setting? Is that challenging? Is it actually not that challenging? What's your experience been like?
This is Lori, and I'll speak since we have over 66 PCIT locations around the state funds. The recording is part of the initial training programs of PCIT. So sites get used to clinicians recording themselves in the sessions just as part of the year of training. And there's a lot of flexibility on how that happens, and of course with permission of the clients. So the actual recording hasn't been a challenge. Uploading consistently in a smooth and easy way, or having the trainers zoom into a session live have been challenging because we have so many rural sites without good internet infrastructure. But I think more importantly, it's the coding and documentation of the core competencies that have to be met for PCIT certification and recertification. That's the challenge.
I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
We have some comments and questions from Takoria Jones, and they are there other aspects of this model fidelity monitoring can track? I was thinking REI, and then the audio drop off, but what about the information? Can a user chart progress, evaluate with specific data, and request from the data fields? And they weren't able to come off mute. And I think maybe there was some connection issues because they just actually dropped off the webinar. But so sorry, can't get a follow-up on that.
Is there an, sorry, Lisa, is there an outstanding question there? Would you repeat the question?
I think they were just asking, can the user chart progress can the user chart progress evaluate with specific data requests from the data fields?
So we have the data download will give all of the session codes for every session at your site. We have we can help you set up kind of maps to what you're interested in to take a closer look at that information at your site. But I guess the short answer is yes. I'm looking to Mike and Brian a little bit. Yes, I believe there is a way to do that, and it has been done in the past.
Yeah, exactly. So you can look at like, how is this therapist done in the last week, in the last month, in the last year, on our dashboard, right, and see how that average change has happened. And then you can also, you know, if you're a data scientist or an administrator, you can just download all the raw stuff, and if you want to make it do what you want to do or map it to specific outcomes that you all collect, that is possible just by the regular default functionality on the platform. You know, one of the things with the data download tool is that we know that you all, different states are going to have different reporting mechanisms for FFPSA. And so we wanted to do, like, in the end, it's like, if there's something that you really want to be able to report onto the feds, you can get that, right? You can download that, so you've got that data. We're also going to be in the process of thinking, like, as more states start to use this for FFPSA, is there something generic we can build where it can fulfill your federal reporting requirements more easily, right? Where you can just show, like, you know, here's the count. This many therapists have gotten a 6 on at least 2 sessions a month. You know, this many therapists average, you know, a high level of competency on motivational interviewing, whatever it might be. You know, we'd love to work with states to sort of develop that, because, right, this is supposed to make your life easier, you know, so that you save time on reporting, you save time on fidelity monitoring, so you can spend your time doing, you know, the things you care about, which is good implementation, instead of worrying about, like, the nuts and the bolts of the stuff.
Jenny, we're receiving a question to talk a little bit about the pricing of Lyssn.
Sure. So the product that I showed you today, Lyssn Advisor, our pricing starts at, breaks down to about $32 a month for a paid seat. So we're on a subscription model. And that paid seat will give you unlimited access to recording, sharing, all of the transcripts and analytics that you get back within that kind of monthly or annual subscription model for our base software. And then we do sometimes partner with organizations to provide additional services. And those are kind of priced on a case-by-case basis. So an example of things that we help with are, you know, motivational interviewing trainings, data analysis to support the reports that you have that are specific to your stakeholders, things like that. Those types of services are kind of priced in addition to that core software cost.
And then one last comment that has come in is, child welfare workers aren't excited about having to record sessions and are concerned families won't consent, which will impact the ability to monitor the fidelity of MI.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a thing that comes up commonly as we onboard new sites, is just this adaptation to recording in general, especially if it's not something that's part of your workflow. And so a few things that our team does to support that is we have an implementation team where that's exactly what we focus on. How do we build up buy-in and engagement? How do you message the use of this tool? How do you recommend the use of this tool at the state level? So, for example, using it in a punitive way, for example, is probably not going to help with your buy-in and continued interest from your workers. And then we're also doing a few things to make it helpful to people that are going to be using the system. So currently in development, we have an automated note writing tool to help with documentation, which is, I think, something that will resonate with caseworkers. And yeah, so I think there's a few different components to that. It is definitely something that's on our radar and something that needs to be addressed head on, but it's nothing that we haven't seen before. And we've successfully helped sites get up to speed on using Lyssn, using, you know, the expertise of our team and some of these engagement strategies that we have at our disposal. So I don't know if anybody wants to add to that, but those are just my initial thoughts. I wholeheartedly agree that this is it's hard. Change is hard all the time. And then when you introduce something like this that can be maybe new to you, that you've never experienced before, there's certainly ways that you can go about it that help with the ongoing buy-in and use.
I guess the one thing I would add is that, you know, since we started this process a number of years ago, and having recorded on our platform, you know, hundreds of thousands of sessions, some of the things we've learned are actually clients are kind of okay with it if you frame it in the right way. Like, hey, this is a tool to make me be better at what I do. Clients actually are fine with it. The hard thing are your providers, right? Caseworkers, therapists, whoever's using the system. They're not used to being monitored in this way. And so that's the implementation challenge. Clients, if you case it in the right way, kind of are generally okay with it. And like I said, you know, as Jenny mentioned, one of the things we're trying to do to make the platform more friendly is, one, just make it more reinforcing, right? Make it like a Peloton bike, where it's saying, positively reinforcing like the little things you're doing, like, hey, you know, you made 100 reflections in the last week. That's awesome. And then the other thing is, like, and this is more focused towards therapists. It'll be interesting to see how this works with caseworkers, but automating the note writing, you know, we're hoping in the next 6 months or so to have a product where, you know, we can really help people speed up writing their notes, because we create a transcript and we can summarize that. And so we're hoping that that helps a little bit with buy-in, because if there's one thing, you know, that caseworkers, that therapists hate, it's documentation. Yeah,
and one other thing I wanted to mention, whether you're interested in using Lyssn or you are going to be recording with your agency in another capacity, a few things that we've found helpful with getting general buy-in is introducing the act of recording at the training phase, so that it becomes normalized to get that feedback right from the beginning, and you're not jumping in, you know, after somebody has received training. And then the other one is, dang it, what was I going to say? But well, it'll come back to me. I'll think of it. Oh, just regularly recording. So agencies that just make recording a way of doing business have, you know, some initial growing pains, but then people get used to the idea of it, and it's just kind of, it's just part of the job. Whereas when you're only selectively recording, it can be a little bit more difficult to get that ongoing engagement in, you know, having somebody choose to record rather than just having it be a way of doing business. So just a few ideas for folks that are thinking about recording for fidelity monitoring purposes.
Keeping note of the time, Jenny, maybe we should close up.
Yeah, I thank you everybody for joining today. I hope this has been a valuable use of your precious time. So thank you for being with us. Tomorrow I will send out information, like a wrap-up summary sheet to you all and a copy of the slide deck. And then we're recording the session, so we'll make that available to you all as soon as we can process that and send it out. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great day. If you're interested in continuing the conversation, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'd love to meet with you one-on-one and talk about your specific needs. And otherwise, wishing you all the best in your family first endeavors.
Bye, have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.